Good evening and welcome to this special election night edition of One America News. I'm Patrick Hushin.
And I'm Laura Nieto. It is now 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and for the next 4 hours, we will be bringing you the latest results and analysis of the biggest races tonight. We've got One America correspondents here in studio and at our bureau at the Capitol, and we will also be dropping in on Rick Amato of the Rick Amato Talk Show for his take on tonight's events.
Of course, Laura, one of the biggest questions of the night is, will the Republicans reclaim the Senate? Now, recent surveys suggest that the GOP will succeed in doing so. They need a total of 6 seats. And of course, we'll be tracking every one of those races very closely. Also, what will the House look like after tonight? What will the Tea Party presence look like on Capitol Hill? And how will Speaker Boehner and the establishment handle that over the next 2 years?
That eventual runoff, it's looking like it probably will be. This race is not going to be tied up until this runoff in January. Now, that is where many of the polls, we should mention, say that should there be a hypothetical runoff against Perdue and none directly without that libertarian factor in there, it's looking like Perdue would probably take that race. Which
would be a pickup for the GOP come January. Now, I grew up in Georgia. Senator Sam Nunn was there for a long time. His daughter, Michelle Nunn, is doing her best against David Perdue. They're both business people, although she grew up in a political household, of course. The people of Georgia are looking for jobs. Many across the country are looking for jobs, but that is one of their main concerns. David Perdue, Mr. Dollar General, added nearly 3,000 Dollar General stores nationwide. He's created over 20,000 jobs. He truly appeals to the people of Georgia. Michelle Nunn says America is better than Congress. That is one of the things she pushed in her ads, and that she's a problem solver. So, just as Tara mentioned, we will see if this goes to January 6th.
And jumping right back into our election coverage this evening, we're going to be taking a look at a very tight race, a Senate race going on in New Hampshire. For more on that and with a look at what's been characterizing this race so far, we go to Fay Lee.
Well, Laura, this has really been considered a toss-up race, and Republicans are trying really hard to pick up a seat right here away from incumbent Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen. And now, as you said, this is a very tight race, and numbers have stayed very close throughout this entire campaign. And the most recent polls right before this election day shows Shaheen leading by just less than 1 point. So, again, very close, but of course, the only numbers that really matter are the numbers from today. And now let's take a look at the numbers we have right now. So right now, according to the Associated Press, 32% of the precincts are reporting, and Shaheen is leading with a little more than 52% of the vote. And her Republican challenger, Scott Brown, is trailing with 47%. And now one of the main things that characterizes this race is possibly how bitter it was. Now, this race was truly littered with negative ads. Jeanne Shaheen using every opportunity to bring up the fact that her Republican challenger, Scott Brown, is considered an outsider because, remember, he was a Massachusetts senator before moving over to New Hampshire. So he has really never been able to kick that image. And Brown, on the other hand, really linking Shaheen to President Obama, saying that she gives him the rubber stamp of approval and votes along with him for all of his, what he calls, failed policies. So, of course, very close race. We're going to be tracking this and updating you with the most recent results. Now back to you.
All right, well, Laura, we're going to go south to another close race, another Democrat incumbent doing well so far. And for that, we're going live to Greensboro, North Carolina, the Tar Heel state, and One America correspondent, Augusta Cassidy. Augusta?
Hi, guys. That's right. We're here in Greensboro, North Carolina, and there is an air of excitement here at the Hagan campaign. Despite Republicans starting off strong on the East Coast, we're seeing a lot of Democratic hope here. We just heard from the newly elected Democratic Congresswoman Alma Adams for the 12th District of North Carolina, and she has fired up this campaign. It's loud, they're excited. We've heard a lot about the issues that really matter to the voters here. What we've really heard a lot about is the working families, the health care rights, and really looking at public education as being one of the major issues for this race, and Kay Hagan being the candidate for that.
Thank you, Augusta, and we're going to try to come back to you in just a bit. We hope you're having a good time. It is loud down there, you're right. So we will keep an eye on that. So, Laura, North Carolina. Right now, we're going to go over to the couch and Natasha with more on Arkansas. Natasha?
Yeah, that's right. This has been one of the most competitive races in the country. And as you guys mentioned, Tom Cotton did win this race. He was predicted to be a winner, but it was very close all along. Now, he was going up against incumbent Mark Pryor, who actually took over his father's Senate seat back in 2002 and won unopposed in 2008. And again, is running again, but he didn't make it for his third term. Now, Obama's approval rating also made his seat a lot more vulnerable, and so that was kind of a big shake-up for Pryor.
All right, well, the first big victory we had this evening was down in Kentucky. Senator Mitch McConnell addresses a crowd in Louisville after voters give him a 6th term in the U.S. Senate. Take a look.
Whether you're a coal miner in eastern Kentucky who can't find work, or a mom in Paducah who doesn't understand why the government just took away her family's health insurance, I've heard your concerns. I've made them my own. You will be heard in Washington.
McConnell's defeat of his Democratic opponent, Allison Lundergan Grimes, means he will likely fulfill a long-time career dream and become Senate Majority Leader, which he's spoken a lot of, if his party retakes control of the Senate. And of course, that's what we're focusing on tonight. That is the word if. You still have to say if. But the way things are going, he could be the new majority leader in the Senate.
Correct. And that had been a very close race. Not so much in the last few days before the election, but there was a point there where Allison Lundergan Grimes had been carrying four points over McConnell. And now tonight she did admit defeat. She conceded defeat in the Kentucky Senate race to her Republican opponent, Mitch McConnell, who, as you said, might be going on tonight to become the majority leader. We're going to have to wait and see. And this is a little bit of what she delivered to her supporters tonight.
While tonight didn't bring us the result that we had hoped for, this journey, the fight for you, it was worth it. I will continue to fight for the Commonwealth of Kentucky each and every day.
Democrats here were hoping that Grimes would be Kentucky's current Secretary of State, that is, would be able to unseat one of the most senior members of Congress. Officials say that it is likely McConnell's victory means he will become the next Senate Majority Leader if his party retakes control of that chamber. Now, this had been, as I was mentioning, a race that a lot of people were looking at, partly because of this kind of threat of Allison Lundergan Grimes nipping at the heels of McConnell this entire race. I think he was even surprised that this was becoming such a competitive race.
Oh, yeah.
He famously gave $1.8 million of his own money to this race, and he said no, it's not because it was getting too close to call, but he was saying he didn't want the RNC to be spending its hard-earned money on this race, which he was sure he was going to win, as he did tonight. But like I mentioned just before, it was close at times.
At one point, it was a little bit of a different picture, but with more on this big victory down in the Bluegrass State, let's go to Faye Lee. Faye?
Thank you. And as you said, it was a really close race, although not so much in the last few weeks right before the election when Mitch McConnell really picked up steam and went ahead of his Democratic challenger, Allison Lundergan Grimes. But as you mentioned, it was quite the nail-biter race because a lot is at stake. It was a symbolically really important race given the fact that Mitch McConnell has such a long career in the Senate. He's not only the incumbent senator, but also the Senate Minority Leader. So you can imagine if he would have lost his seat to the Democratic challenger, what kind of a symbolic catastrophe that would have been for Republicans. But Republicans were able to hold on. Now about 100% of the precincts are reporting, and we're seeing that Mitch McConnell has won the race with 56% of the vote. And now with how things are going, it looks like he may even just maybe ascend to become the Senate Majority Leader. Now, as you said, a lot of money was spent in this race. Mitch McConnell, some of his own money, and about $100 million was actually put in just because of how important this race is. And both Grimes and the Democratic Party really went in there and put up a tough fight. And actually, some had even called this race the toughest re-election campaign of Senator Mitch McConnell. But the results are out, and Senator Mitch McConnell will be holding on to his seat and maybe, just maybe, even ascend to the position of the Senate Majority Leader. Now back to you.
All right, and we're going to head down to the Pelican State. I'm just going to keep reeling off.
I know. I'm curious to see how many of these you know. I thought I knew a lot.
We're getting to the ceiling on those. But with more on that, Tara and Bree. Tara?
Yeah, I learned something new. Didn't know Louisiana was the Pelican state. Did you?
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Always giving us little history lessons around here.
We're going to be going to our D.C. bureau and checking in with David Brody with some reactions from Washington. David.
Well, I got to tell you, it is a beautiful night out here in Washington. It's got to be about 60 degrees, and actually, it's probably a pretty beautiful night if you're a Republican somewhere in this country, because it's shaping up very, very well. We're still waiting for results coming in from North Carolina. Look, if Tom Tillis can pull the upset, and it would be an upset, beating Kay Hagan down there in North Carolina, folks, that's game, set, match. That's the Senate for the Republicans. They will win control of the Senate. And there's other ones out there too, but that's the big one we're watching right now.
Project now, we'd like to say, One American News is projecting David Perdue, the GOP challenger, the one that everyone thought was going to take Michelle Nunn into a runoff. He will take the state of Georgia, and that will be, if all holds true, number 6 for the GOP in the Senate, which could be huge. David Perdue could be match point, as David Brody said, as opposed to the North Carolina race and Tom Tillis. Perdue beat him to the punch, it seems. Right now, I'd like to go to Studio A and Rick Amato. Rick?
All right, thank you. Again, this is our inaugural coverage of election night here on the One America News Network. I'm Rick Amato, joining you throughout the hour with up-to-date results, perspective, insight, analysis, and expert guests. Now, up to date, real quick. The Republicans are on the brink of picking up the 6 Senate seats, which they need. South Dakota, West Virginia, Arkansas, Montana, Colorado have been called. Georgia has been called. And it looks like Louisiana will go Republicans' way in the runoff, but we'll get to that later. One of the key issues, of course, in this election has been the war on women narrative put out forth by the Democrats. Has it resonated? Has it not resonated? Joining me in studio to discuss this issue is Tomi Lahren. Tomi's a talk show host here on One American News. Her show can be seen on weekends and throughout the week as well. Tomi, good to see you.
Nice to have you here, Rick, and especially discussing the war on women, which has been pushed heavily throughout this election cycle. And I think it's showing tonight with Republicans obviously up, fingers crossed, they're going to take it, we're going to go red. It's showing that, once again, it's a false narrative. It's lip service paid by the Democrats. And we're seeing that women are not voting for people that look like them, but for people that can represent them.
Welcome back to the program here. We're going to be jumping right back in to take a look at the Kansas Senate race. Now, we have been mentioning this one a little bit earlier because this was not pitting your typical Democrat-Republican race. This is where we were seeing a Republican incumbent being challenged by an independent, and that independent, it was a little bit tricky to see where he might caucus should he win. But he did not win. We can now declare that the sitting senator from Kansas, Pat Roberts, has beaten Greg Orman in the Kansas race. For more on that, we're going to be going to our map with Bree Teeley and Tara Millspaugh.
That's right, Laura. Pat Roberts has taken this win. We are keeping him in the Republican seat in the Senate. Pat Roberts won by about 100,000 votes. And Kansas is a predominantly red state, so it's not much of a surprise there that Pat Roberts is there. But it was going to be interesting if Greg Orman did win, because he said whoever wins majority, he would caucus with that. But he is out of the race now. Pat Roberts does take the win.
For a little bit more about these races, coming into us now from our D.C. bureau in Washington, we go again to David Brody. David.
Hey, Laura. Hey, Patrick. Boy, what a night for the Republicans, that's for sure. Look, all eyes are on North Carolina, as you've been talking about. And I've got to tell you, what we understand, it's 1.3%. That's the lead that Tom Tillis right now, with about 96% reporting. He's got the lead over Kay Hagan. Look, if he pulls this off, well, look, it's already been a huge night for the Republicans. If he wins in North Carolina, that mini wave just became a major wave, and Look, it's still not done in Virginia, though we understand Ed Gillespie might have a hard time now beating Mark Warner. We'll see about that. But the fact that Virginia is even this close, or has been this close all evening, really says a lot about the state of the Democrat Party. We do understand that, or at least this is the information we're getting, that the Democratic National Committee had a press conference scheduled for about 11 o'clock tonight. That has been canceled. What does that say exactly? Look, North Carolina, back to that state for a moment, $103 million spent in a Senate race, $103 million. That's huge. Kay Hagan stuck with the president all along for the most part, not disavowing any of those votes that she took for the president's agenda. Clearly it has come back to hurt her tonight. Look in Colorado, Cory Gardner, what a story there. I mean, Cory Gardner is close to a robo-candidate as you can have. I mean, this guy was impeccable the whole way through, made very few mistakes. And that's actually more of an interesting point generically, if you will, about the state of the Republican Party. You remember a few years ago when the Tea Party was putting up flawed candidates. Why were they flawed? Well, they said, let's face it, let's just call it what it was, some boneheaded moves, and they said some boneheaded things that got them into trouble and cost them Senate seats. Those were Tea Party candidates. Now, they basically, the GOP, nominated much more mainstream conservative candidates like a Cory Gardner in Colorado, and boom, you've got a victory for the Republicans in Colorado. Montana, no surprise, the Representative Daines out there winning. Of course, Montana was in essence going to be a Republican pickup all along. And then in Georgia, you know, this is a big deal too, guys. David Perdue, now this was a seat held by Saxby Chambliss, so of course this was a Republican seat. But David Perdue was expected to go to a runoff with Michelle Nunn. They didn't think David Perdue, the Republican, would get 50% of the vote. I mean, he's getting 50% of the vote. He's getting more than that. He's obviously the winner. And so there's all sorts of Republican storylines tonight that are positive in nature. Democrats licking their wounds, and folks, and this is good news for Republicans. I don't know about Democrats out there, but for Republicans, Harry Reid will no longer be the majority leader in the United States Senate, and that is a huge deal because it shifts the dynamic in the Senate in so many different ways. Look, Republicans were frustrated with Harry Reid. Many conservative Americans were frustrated with Harry Reid that he wouldn't move much of anything as it related to the Republican agenda. But beyond that, he was pretty much a bottleneck, if you will, to get a lot of bills through the Senate. That's where the logjam was. And so now Harry Reid is out, Mitch McConnell is in. And what does that mean? Well, here's what it means, folks. It means that the Republicans are going to start to send all of these bills to President Obama's desk, the Keystone Pipeline, energy regulations as it relates to the EPA. They're going to do all sorts of different things here. And then what's going to happen is the president is going to have to get out that veto pen. And so what that means in 2016, we're going to have a veto pen president versus a Republican Congress that is trying to push their agenda, and voters in 2016 are going to have to make a choice between what side do they want to go on, or what side do they want to vote for, I should say. And so this is all just fascinating to me. I mean, I love this. Let's face it, I'm a political geek. This is the night of all nights. It's a starry, starry night in Washington. And boy, I've got energy. I could go all night. Let's go. Let's just keep going.
David, thank you so much. You're the best of political geeks, as we like to say. And
just to give a little bit more in-depth look at the Iowa Senate race, even though results are still coming in, it looks like Joni Ernst is above by almost 40,000 votes. So it is going to Joni Ernst. And this was a huge pickup for Republicans because this was retiring Senator Tom Harkin's seat. That was vacant. So it could have gone to Bruce Braley or Joni Ernst, but because it went red, Republicans have picked up the seat. And even though it's extremely close, as you can see in the counties, it is extremely red. And we go to Bree now to take a look at the counties and how close it really is.
That's right. Now, this is the way the state looks, the state of Iowa. This is the way the counties are voting. And so, as you can see here, the majority of the state is red. They are leaning towards Joni Ernst. There are a few counties that are blue. Of course, the bigger counties, Polk counties, where Des Moines is, and also Cedar Rapids, Lynn County. They are all leaning blue towards Bruce Braley, but as is the trend all night, this just does not seem to be enough for for Democrats, and Republicans are taking this one. Joni Ernst is the winner, but this is just an incredibly tight race, as they have been all night long. We're getting some even more up-to-date numbers in. It shows Joni Ernst has 51% of the vote. She has 442,000 votes to Bruce Braley's 391,000 votes. He has 45.1%. So that's only about 50,000 votes difference. So an extremely tight race, but Senate seat number 7 going to the Republicans. So a good night for them.
That's right. Absolute good night. 7 seats. Back to you, Patrick and Laura.
Thank you, Bree and Tara. We're going to head down to sunny Southern California and the gubernatorial race down there. And with more on that, Faye Lee.
All right, thank you so much. Well, you know, it's just about 8:45 p.m. here in California. Polls close at 8. Only 27% of the precincts are reporting right now, but it is safe to say that Jerry Brown has won the gubernatorial race for a 4th term in the governor's mansion. No surprise there. He has about 57% of the votes right now, with just about 27% of the precincts reporting. Now, many people have really seen this as one of the quietest gubernatorial races. No surprise, really. The polls show Governor Jerry Brown leading by more than 18 points throughout this campaign. And he really didn't even do much campaigning at all. He allowed for one debate, and that's it. He instead focuses time on campaigning for Proposition 1 and 2, and that's for dealing with the rainy day fund and water infrastructure in California. Of course, if you are living in California, California is going through a historic drought. So his opponent, Neil Kashkari, really, he kind of went out of his way to campaign. He, did many interviews, including one with One American News right here in our studio. And he also put in millions of dollars of his own money into this campaign just to get the word out, just to get the voters to know that he is on the ballot. But so far, we are calling that Jerry Brown has won the gubernatorial race right here in California.
The GOP has pulled off what they set out to do. They wanted 6 seats to claim the majority of the Senate, and they have done so. They now control both houses of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, upper and lower chamber, pitching Mitch McConnell into his much desired position as Senate Majority Leader, as he held on to his seat as well tonight.
And we'll see where that takes us over the next 2 years with President Obama still at the helm. So we want to thank you for joining us for this coverage tonight. It's been incredible. This is our inaugural election coverage.
Big night for the country and big night for us as well. I haven't talked about it quite as much, but this is an inaugural night for us as well.
That's right. Of course, we have more to come. Dewan Hogard's going to be right here at the desk for 2 hours. Next 2 hours, he's going to be keeping an eye on Alaska, that Senate race out there, and of course, any other numbers that are coming in, along with the headlines happening around the nation and the world.
Keep it here on One American News. It's been a great night.